If you're researching the Phoenix area right now, chances are you've already seen a lot of advice that sounds confident, polished, and absolute. But most relocation mistakes don't come from bad advice. They come from incomplete advice. Today, I want to give you the context most people never get to before they move. The part that actually determines whether the Phoenix area feels like an upgrade or a grind. Some Phoenix neighborhoods look almost flawless online. The photos are bright, the streets are wide and clean, and the homes are brand new, staged perfectly, and surrounded by tidy landscaping. Everything about them feels calm, polished, and very easy. When buyers visit for the first time, that decision feels obvious. They drive in, they see the entrances, they see the pretty model homes, and they think, this is it. This feels right. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The neighborhoods that look the best online are often the ones that buyers struggle with the most after they have already moved in. Not because they're bad neighborhoods, and not because buyers made a careless decision, but because many of these neighborhoods were designed to sell extremely well and not necessarily to support everyday life once that initial excitement wears off. Online research shows how a place looks. It does not show you how it functions. And that gap between appearance and reality is where that frustration starts to creep in. Buyers relocating to the Phoenix area rely heavily on photos, videos, virtual tours, and maps. And yes, we help with all of them. That's understandable. You're making a big decision from a distance, and visuals feel like the safest place to evaluate. But what you don't experience online is the daily traffic. You don't feel how long it actually takes to run a quick errand. You don't experience how the neighborhood operates during the normal work week. You don't see what happens when everyone is leaving at the same time in the morning or coming home at the same time in the evening. And you don't feel how small those inconveniences stack up over time. The distance is usually the first surprise. Some neighborhoods feel calm and quiet because they are far from everything else. And at first, that distance feels peaceful. It feels removed. It feels slower. And it feels like an escape from the busier areas. Buyers often describe it as a quiet or relaxing experience, but over time, that same distance starts to feel isolating. Driving for groceries becomes a routine. Driving for medical appointments becomes expected. Driving for basic activities just becomes unavoidable. And at first, you don't think of it very much. You tell yourself it's just part of living somewhere new. You assume you just get used to it. And then daily life settles in. And what once felt calm starts to feel inconvenient. Those quick trips stop being super quick. Spontaneous plans require some more planning. And you start to think twice before leaving the house because every outing feels like a commitment. Buyers often say they didn't expect daily life to feel so spread out. They assume that because the neighborhood looks complete, life there would feel complete too. But some newer neighborhoods don't function the same way established areas do. And that's where the second layer of that reality really sets in. New construction adds another layer of friction that buyers rarely hear about before moving. Newer neighborhoods look finished on the surface. The homes are complete, the streets are paved, and the signage is up. But the surrounding infrastructure often lags pretty far behind. Construction doesn't stop when you move in, it shifts. There are trucks during the day, dust in the air, noise you didn't notice during those short visits. Amenities that were promised feel delayed, and retail that was coming soon feels longer than they expected. And during this time, daily life requires more effort. Model homes don't reflect what it actually feels like once the neighborhood fills in. They don't reflect the noise, the dust, or the constant adjustments. They don't reflect what it's like when the novelty wears off and you're just trying to live your everyday life. Another factor buyers don't fully understand until they experience it is how heat interacts with the location. Phoenix heat is unavoidable, but how you experience it depends heavily on where you live and how your neighborhood is designed. Newer areas often have less mature landscaping. That means fewer trees, less shade, and more exposed surfaces. On a short visit, it's barely noticeable. But once it becomes part of your everyday routine, it changes how you move through your day. Walking from the car to the store feels different. Running errands feels heavier. Outdoor spaces don't get used the same way, and as you expected. Buyers often say they didn't realize how much the environment would affect their habits. They assumed the Phoenix area and our heat was just something everyone dealt with in the exact same way. It's not. Some locations amplify it, and others help buffer it, and that difference becomes very clear once you're living here full time. Another issue that quietly builds frustration is how neighborhoods are laid out sometimes. Wide streets look great in photos. Long distance between homes feels spacious and open. But those same design choices often mean longer internal drives just to get in and out of the neighborhood. It can take several minutes just to reach the main road. That doesn't feel like a big deal at first, but over time, it can add some friction to your everyday outings. That friction changes your behavior. You consolidate your trips. You delay errands. You choose convenience over variety. And slowly, your world feels smaller, not bigger. Stress usually just becomes one big issue. It comes from small inconveniences stacking up. Longer drives, more planning, less spontaneity. Everyone feels manageable on its own. Together, they change how you live your life. Buyers don't usually say they hate their neighborhood. They say things like, it's just harder than we expected. And that's the key difference. The home isn't the problem. The location is adding to the friction. Another area where expectations and reality diverge is the flexibility. Many newer neighborhoods operate under stricter rules and guidelines with their HOA. At first, those rules feel reasonable. They feel like the neighborhood makes it look cleaner and organized. Most buyers assume they'll never be affected. They skim the documents, they sign the paperwork, and they move on. As the time passes, those same rules start to feel more restrictive. Parking becomes an issue. Guest limitation becomes noticeable. Exterior guidelines feel less flexible than they once were. What once felt ordinary begins to feel limiting. Here's the part most buyers don't realize what's going on. Many of those neighborhoods are designed for a very specific version of what daily life is. As long as your routine fits that mold, everything feels fine. And when the routine changes, the neighborhood doesn't adapt with you. Maybe your kids get older and you need more spaces in your driveway. Flexibility becomes more important over time, not less. And neighborhoods that looked perfect at the beginning can start to feel rigid. Another controversial truth is that many buyers confuse quiet with convenience. Quiet feels appealing during a tour, but quiet doesn't always mean easy. Some neighborhoods are quiet because they're disconnected. That disconnection doesn't matter much on the weekends, but it does on the work week. It shapes everything. Those errands take longer, the appointments require more planning, and just life feels less fluid. And over time, that lack of ease becomes just tiring. Buyers often say they didn't realize how much effort everyday life required, and they expected the move to just simplify things. Instead, it just added more steps. This is where regret quietly starts to form. Not because the neighborhood is wrong, but because it didn't actually support how people were living. The buyer who struggles the most didn't ignore red flags. They just didn't know what to look for. They focused on the pretty curb appeal. They focused on the finishes. And they focused on what photographed well. Smart buyers look beyond how a neighborhood looks. They pay attention to how it functions. They think about weekdays, not just weekends. They consider how often they need to leave the area or the neighborhood. They think about flexibility, convenience, and adaptability down the road. They ask how life will feel once that novelty wears off. They understand that the best looking neighborhood isn't about the best living one. And here's the controversial part that most people don't even want to hear. A lot of regret comes from choosing a place that looks impressive instead of one that just feels easy. The neighborhood that markets the best doesn't always live the best for you. And popularity doesn't equal long-term satisfaction. The buyers who are the happiest years down the road usually didn't choose that flashiest option. They chose the one that supports their daily life. They prioritize function over finishes, and they value ease over appearance. If you're relocating to the Phoenix area and want help identifying some of these neighborhoods that actually work in real life, and not just online, reach out. That clarity before you actually move can save you years of frustration. And it can make the difference between loving where you live and quietly wondering why something that looks so perfect doesn't feel right anymore.